Hello, welcome back. I'm Jeff Byers. This is Annie 150 and this is Module 1 and this is Part 3 where we're going to actually create a high poly out of a low poly. Now it makes sense to me because I really don't like retopologizing objects, and I rarely do retopologize. I have a workflow that works really good where I create a low poly, duplicate it, and then I create a high poly for that so we can bake our maps. So the idea is to create a high poly that looks just like the can. Okay, we're going to create a model that's photorealistic to the way this can is modeled. Okay, so I might have to do this in two parts, but let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to do is I want to duplicate this can. So with it selected, okay, I'm going to do a Control D. The Control key and plus the D key will duplicate this. As you can see, I can move this off to the side. Okay, alright, so I don't want to move it off to the side, so what I'm going to do is once I do Control D, I'm going to click on in the layer, I'm going to click on this guy right here. Okay, basically what it does is when I did Control D, I clicked on this icon right here and it creates a new layer. I'm going to call this high poly. Okay, underscore poly. There we go. And click save. Okay, and I'm going to turn that off, the visibility off. I'm going to click on this guy, this original. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go Control D. I duplicated it. I'm going to click on this icon right here, and I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to call this low poly. I'm getting myself set up to where I can have multiple objects in the same scene occupying the same space. It gets a little dangerous though. Click on save. Okay, I'm going to turn that off. The reason why that gets a little bit messy is because if I click on my original, you can see it's by itself. It's not in a layer though. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to go ahead and let me show you the fastest way to move something back where you had it before is to translate is kind of, if we set that to 0, okay, that'll get us back to where we need to be. The translate Y is us moving that up there, so we don't want to change that. And the scale now, the scale is all set up. So what I want to do now is I've got these things that you can see, the translates and the scale. I've got those. I don't want to set those. I want to have those all set to 0, but I want to keep my same shape. How do I do that? Well, from time to time I delete my history and freeze transformation. So you can see under poly modeling on the shelf editor here, okay, this is where we created our cylinder. Okay, if I move over, you can see that we've got center pivot, okay, we've got delete by type history, and we've got freeze transformations. Well, what do those do? Well, if we actually move vertices around, our center pivot is not centered properly. So I can click on that, you can see it moved it down. That's center pivot. And then delete by type history is what you see here. I created a cylinder and I made some changes to it. If I delete history, you can see that goes away. Okay? And then when I freeze transformation, then it freezes all these to 0. So I'm going to click on this one here, and you can see that changes everything to 0. Okay? Alright, so we made duplicates and we created a high poly layer and a low poly layer. Okay? And then the original will be the food can. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that's selected. Okay? And then we're going to create a new layer. Make sure you select the layer, okay, that you just created, and you're going to right click over it and you're going to add selected objects. So the object is selected, you're going to click on the layer that you want to add the object to, you're going to go right click over it and go to add selected objects. So I'm going to turn that off and on. So you can see it worked. That object is now in that layer. We're going to type in original. Okay. Alright, so basically that's the original. Okay, so I'm going to click anywhere in the gray area here. Now I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to turn on high poly because I want to work with my high poly. So that's my high poly, so I'm going to turn this object into a high poly object. Alright, so what we're going to do is the first tool I'm going to show you to use is something I use all the time. Okay, and we're going to create that little rim right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Shift key and right mouse button and go to Insert Edge Loop tool. Okay, you can also find that under Edit Mesh and Insert Edge Loop tool. Where is that? Is it Mesh Tools? There it is, Mesh Tools. So under Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop. I rarely go to this area here. I usually will always hold the, let me show you again. Go to Select. So I'm right mouse button selecting, go to Select. And what we want to do is we want to hit the Q key. That gets us out of that. So I'm going to go back into selection mode. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to right mouse button and I'm going to go into Insert Edge Loop tool. I love doing this. It's really fast. Shift, hold down the Shift key, right mouse button over the object, make sure it is turned green. That's object mode. And you're gonna see me do this all the time. I rarely go up into Mesh, Edit Mesh, and Mesh Tools, or hold down the space bar. Okay, you can do that, right? You can get the same tools. Okay, Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop, right? But it's slower, believe it or not, than holding the Shift key and right mouse button go into Insert Edge Loop tool. I do this a lot. Okay, Insert Edge Loop tool, and I'm going to click anywhere on the object just to get it started, and you can see that arrow. If I hold down, if I go into my front view, now this is where the reference really comes in handy. I can see where the bottom of this edge is. So I'm going to click on that, and you can see right on that line, that edge, okay, it will create a line all the way across. Alright, it's following a good edge flow. Okay, following a good edge flow. So you can see that line's all the way across. Okay, I'm going to do that to the bottom too as well. Go down here, and I'm going to click on the bottom like that as well. There we go. And it's kind of look at those two. Okay, we want them to be even. Okay, so a lot of times if I want to see those, okay, I'm going to hit the Q key again. So hitting the Q key, if you don't, you'll be clicking on your object and it will give you edge loops. So you'll have to do an undo, like Control Z, right? But it's easy to go back. So I can select. I'm right mouse buttoning over the object and clicking select. I can hold down the Shift key, right mouse button, go into edge loop, Insert Edge Loop, and I want you guys to practice that, okay? And then I can click anywhere on the object, right? Get it started. And then click where you want. And I can hold down my left mouse button too, and I can move this around. Okay, so you're not stuck. Okay, you can hold down your left mouse button and move it around. Now, if you make a mistake, go Control Z. There we go. And you can even Control Z back. And you can start over again, which is nice. So we're going to insert an edge loop. Okay, and by holding down your left mouse button and moving it up and down. I'll do that again, and holding my left mouse button down, I can move that up and down. When I release it, it will basically insert that edge loop where you want it. So I'm going to hit the Q key again. So that's our first step. Okay, now the second step I'm going to show you is a little more difficult to do. Okay, so we have this edge right here done, this part right here. Now we got to do the thickness of that edge right here. How thick is that little edge there? So I need to create that. So I'm going to right click, go to face mode this time. Now I can select these one at a time, okay, which is, you know, kind of slow and tedious. Holding down the Shift key, I'm holding down the Shift key and selecting all those. Okay, is there an easier way? Of course there is. Okay, I'll show you a couple ways. So you can select them one at a time, and the thing is you might select some things behind it accidentally. And then there's another way. Click off. Okay, there's another way to select all those faces, and it's the paint tool. So I'm going to click on the paint tool, and you can hold down the B key and your left mouse button and make it bigger or smaller. So kind of make it about medium size, and I can go ahead and paint the top of those and paint those faces. Okay, I can do that. Okay, that's the second way to do it. Again, I'm going to hit the Q key. I'm going to click off. I'm going to click on the paint tool so I can paint, and I can hold that B key down. B as in Bobby. Okay, and holding it down and my left mouse button, I can move it back and forth and scale it, kind of like what you can do in Photoshop, right? Or excuse me, or like a paint program, or I don't know if Photoshop will let you do that or not, but a lot of paint programs or 3D programs will let you do that. So now I can go ahead and select those, and that's the way I do that a lot. And then there's that hit the Q key again. And then there's a way from the side view that's super easy, and I've learned this the hard way, but I'm going to show you guys right away to do it. So you can marquee select the top section. Obviously we get too much, right? We only want the top. But then you can go in here and hold the control key and deselect and leave the top. I'll show you again. So I'm going to click off. Nothing selected, right? So in the front view, I'm going to select. Okay, just marquee select the top, and then I'm going to hold down the control key and deselect the bottom, and that's about as fast as you can get. So you can, I'll show you again in real time, selection, and then deselect, and it's done. No painting, nothing. Okay, and you know exactly what you're getting. Right, so a new tool. So that's how you can select your faces. Okay. You can select them one by holding the shift key. You can click on the paint tool by holding the shift key down, painting the top. Or you can go to the side view and marquee select and then deselect by holding the control key to deselect the ones you don't want. And that is actually the fastest way. Okay, but there are three ways I wanted to show you. And then the next thing we're going to do is we are going to do Control E. Okay, Control E. There we go. Alright, so now what we can do is we can click on this arrow right here, the red arrow, and we can move that, but we don't want to move it, we want to scale it down, don't we? So we want to scale it in, so what we want to do is click on the cube at the end, okay? And that cube is now selected, and so now it gives us a center selection. So it's like everything else we've done. If we want to do uniform selection and scaling, we want to do it that way, we can by selecting the center cube of this manipulator. And so if I want to do if we want to just scale in the X direction or the Z direction, we can, but it's not going to be uniform. It's going to be called non-uniform scaling. Okay, so let's go back and let's do uniform scaling. And what we want to do is we want to scale the thickness of that object. So it's not very thick. Again, we want to be realistic, so it's not very thick. And so we want to keep that, all right, that selection. If you accidentally click off the selection, don't worry. You can right click back on there and click on face, okay, and then select those faces again. Okay, I'm going to Control Z back, get that back where we were. Okay, that's our first extrude. So we learned how to insert an edge loop, and then we learned how to select faces, and then we learned how to do an extrude, which is Control E. Okay, Control E. E is in Egbert. So E, Control E. Alright, so let's do Control E again, Control E. And this time we're going to use the arrow key. We're going to give that depth right here. So we're going to move that down. Okay, like that. Move that down. Great. Awesome. Alright, so that's basically our start, and you can see that that looks pretty good. Okay, that thickness looks pretty good. Now we'd have to do the same thing for the bottom. Okay, so you can do the same thing, the same exact thing for the bottom. Okay, now there is some people, students out there, that feel that what you can do is you can finish up the top and then you can divide this can in half. Okay, and then you could duplicate it over. Okay, alright, so yeah, you can do that. It almost takes the same amount of time. You can sit there and argue about which is faster, and I'm not going to sit here and debate or argue with it. What you can do is you can go ahead and go to the bottom and do the same exact thing, which doesn't take much time at all. I'll kind of take you through the real time. I'm going to marquee select it, hold the control key, deselect what I don't need, go to the bottom. I can go control E, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the cube and hold down the left mouse button on the center cube and do the same thing. I can go to the top view and even go to shading and X-ray and see through, and I can see exactly what I'm doing here. I can follow exactly from the top view what I did before and scale that in. And now I'm going to go control E and then move that arrow up. Okay, now I can go to the side view and kind of see where I'm at with that. Okay, let's see what I did for the top. I just went below it just a little bit, so I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Just go below a little bit, the arrow, like that. There we go. Okay, so that looks about right. Okay, we can always make changes. And this is actually, believe it or not, faster than dividing the object in half. The thing is, you can do that, and that's fine. You guys find your little your ways, okay, your workflow that you would like to use. And you can cut it in half and mirror it over. There's nothing keeping you from doing that. Anyway, so there's two ways of modeling. There's actually several ways of modeling this. Anyway, so let's go ahead and keep moving on. Right, so let's go in here to the face mode again. We want to select those faces. Okay, and again, the fastest way that I found to select faces is to do this. So I'm going to select these faces up here. I'm going to marquee select, deselect, hold the control key and deselect those, and that will leave us just with those faces, just like that. So I'm going to go control E, okay, click on the red box and then click on the left mouse button, click the center, and then we'll scale that in. Okay, now what we're going to do now is we're making our first bump here. We have two bumps in a can. Okay, so our first edge of that bump, we got to kind of figure out where that is. Okay, so the first edge, and we're just going to eyeball it right now. Okay, doesn't have to be perfect, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, and that is done. So I'm going to go to the center. So I'm going to go scale in the center. So I'm going to go control E, click on the red cube again, and then scale that in. And what I'm going to do is I'm just kind of guessing where that first edge is right here. Okay, and then we just move it in, scale it in, okay, uniformly, and then control E again, click on the outside red cube, and we're going to move that in. We're going to keep that uniform. You can see that we've got the first up and down, first up and then down, okay. And we're going to just kind of keep those uniform. See the distance between the two? Keep that uniform. Okay. We're going to do control E again, extrude, control E, and we're going to click on the center cube again and do the same exact thing. Okay. Alright, so do we have a little gap there before we go into the next ridge? It's hard to tell. I don't think there is. So we're going to go ahead and bring that in again uniformly. Okay, the distance uniformly in. Okay, and then we're going to do Control E again, and then we're going to move that in like that. Okay. Okay, so we're getting a lot of detail in there. Okay. So now the question is, well, we've got two edges here. Now we needed one more edge. Let me go Control Z back. There we go. With that selection on, you can see that if I go in here and scale that, you can see I can still scale it. We need one more, actually a couple more. There's a ridge that goes up a little bit in the center of the can. So everything's looking pretty good. Pretty happy with that. So what I want to do now is Control E again, Control E to extrude, click on the box again and scale that in just a little bit. That's where we're going to start. And then we're going to Control E again, and then we'll scale that in. Okay. Right, and we're going to move this up. So now we're going to use the arrow and move it up. Just like that. Okay. Okay, so a couple things we're going to do now. We're going to right click over this, actually click off of this, so you can see this is what we have so far. Okay? Alright, so now what we're going to do is going to go to Edge Mode, and we're not going to click on the first one, we're going to double click on the second one. Double click on the second one. Okay, we're going to leave this one and double click on this one. So let's hold on the Shift key. So click on this one. We're going to go one in, double click, and then hold down the Shift key. And then we're going to miss one here. Not going to click on that one. We're going to double click on this one. Okay. And we're going to hit the W key and move these up. Just like that. Very cool. Okay. From the side view, you can see we'll go probably about a quarter way up the can, maybe. Maybe we can do more. Let's make that kind of obvious. So halfway up the can. There we go. Those are going to be really obvious. And what about this guy right here? Double click on that, go to the side, the front view, and let's move that up to match these other guys. So you can see where the other guys are. This is that piece right there. Let's do the same amount. There we go, like that. Okay, great, awesome. Okay, there we go. So now we've got basically the ridge up, and then we've got these pieces that go up, 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 ridge. Okay, that looks pretty good. And we're at about 22 minutes, so we need to move on to the next part where we're going to add, we're going to pull this edge out here. So we're going to extrude that face, and we'll see you in the next video.